Welcome back, everyone. This afternoon, Finance Minister Tito Mboweni walked his tightrope, tabling a 5-year fiscal consolidation pathway. This aims to promote economic growth while bringing spiraling debt under control. The minister said that the cabinet remains resolute and will walk through the narrow gate towards fiscal sustainability. Joining me to unpack the details of the midterm budget speech further is Botha, an economist at Rand Merchant Bank, and Botha, Senior Associate for Tax and Exchange Control at Cliff Decker Hofmeyr. Good afternoon to you, Mpho and Louis. I just want to refer to the Finance Minister. I mean, we know he likes to describe South Africa's economy as an allopherics plant, a plant that is very resistant to the harshest and toughest of weather. He did so again in true form this afternoon and said that the allopherics, or South Africa's economy, has survived, in fact, and is recovering. I'd like to ask the both of you if you would agree with that statement. Mpho, to begin with you.
Hi, Fifi. I totally agree with the minister's assessment of the recovery, and I think he was specifically referring to the third quarter recovery. And when we monitor the high-frequency data, it does indeed show quite a strong rebound in the region of about 50 to 60% quarter-on-quarter seasonally adjusted annualized terms. So in terms of the short-term recovery, yes, he's correctly right. But when we look at the longer-term outlook, I think that's where concerns are going to emerge, especially at the back of the slow reform in terms of policy from a government perspective. But he did highlight in his speech that that's going to be one of the key priority areas to try and fast-track reform so that we can get the economy growing. Because without growth, we're not going to be able to deliver on this fiscal consolidation plan.
Yeah, you're talking about Operation Vulindlela, I think, as one of those key areas in which he is talking about fast-tracking and unlocking the implementation plans around structural reform, hoping that the public and private sector come to the party there. Louis, for you, would you agree? I mean, Mpho is making note of the fact that high-frequency data is showing that there are green shoots in the economy, as the minister did say. And I want to know, as a layman, if that means that the worst in terms of a COVID crisis is behind us.
Well, I think I agree with the sentiments expressed by Mpho. I think, the one positive thing also, if one looks at the tax side, which obviously is affected by, economic activity, the more economic activity is going on, the greater revenue, the higher the tax revenue collected would likely be. So the one positive in that sense that the minister noted was that even though the gross revised tax revenue is slightly down, it will be offset by other amounts to be received within the National Revenue Fund. So at the very least, it doesn't seem that things have deteriorated since the adjustment budget was given a few months ago, or the outlook at least, compared from then to now.
Okay. I suppose it's the way forward that it sounds like both of you are most worried about. And Mpho, I just would like to get your view then on the way forward as the minister sees it, in terms of the structural changes that will hopefully be implemented to get South Africa on a path in which we're not hitting sovereign debt crisis levels. Are you confident in his plan to consolidate debt over the next 5 years to the point whereby we'll be talking about a budget surplus come 2026? Are you confident in his plans to, essentially, put money behind some of the president's initiatives that were announced 2 weeks ago, in which some 800,000 jobs or so will be created in the medium term? And just adding to that confidence, what are you concerned about still?
Yeah, I mean, from my side, I'm a bit worried about the fiscal consolidation plan because it hinges on reduction in compensation of employees. But that also didn't come as a surprise. So our initial reaction to the special adjustment budget is that it's going to be very difficult for the minister to deliver on the 230 billion in addition to the 160 billion cuts outlined in the February budget. And we had also indicated that to even get half of the cuts of the 230, it would have to come from compensation of employees. And that's actually quite important. We've been talking about an excessive wage bill in government, and that we need to realign expenditure towards investment, which is more growth enhancing, instead of borrowing money to put into recurrent expenditure. So what the minister is trying to do, we can definitely applaud his efforts, but it has high implementation risk, because according to his estimates, compensation of employees is only going to increase by about 0.8% over the MTEF, which means that in real terms, wages and salaries of public servants are going to be declining. Now, we then need labor to come to the party, right? I mean, you can justify it that, given the past few years, where wages and salaries in the public sector have way exceeded inflation in real terms. So then it makes sense for us to target there and cut there. But now what this means is that we need labor to come to the party. If labor does not come to the party, then unfortunately the minister won't be able to deliver on the fiscal consolidation path. But it was indeed sobering. It provided a lot more details than what we saw in the special adjustment budget, so it was quite re-encouraging from that perspective. And in terms of the growth and recovery plan, where we are encouraged is that the president has focused and streamlined the reform agenda. So he's not targeting 1,000 things. He's only targeting 4 things. The key one being the electricity, which has been such a binding constraint on the South African economy. So if you just think about 2020, and if you just consider that we've had more load shedding days than we did in 2019, and that's even with an economy that's expected to contract by about 8% this year. So that shows you what a binding constraint electricity is. So the efforts to try and concentrate and lift the electricity constraint, those are definitely going to go a long way. But unfortunately, that's going to take time. So over the next 2 to 3 years, we still have to live at least with stage 2 load shedding. In terms of the employment initiatives, I think those are going to be particularly targeted more towards rural areas and the townships, so that we can get some employment going there. But my sense is that it's likely to be more similar to the EPWP type of jobs, which don't really have major benefits, and the income sometimes is not that consistent. But it's better to create those employment opportunities than to give more grants to people to just sit at home. So at least with employment opportunities, they will in the process gain some skills.
Yeah. No, definitely. And just going back to the point that you were making about the wage bill and the rate of increase in those wages in the past 5 years or so, the minister highlighting that it had grown by about 7%, and which is above what inflation has been. But then he also made the point that workers have seen, and national government at SOEs have seen, the private sector having to implement tough measures in which salaries have had to be cut as a result of COVID-19. And I'm wondering, and of course, Labour has also seen, they've been involved in these negotiations in the private sector. And I'm wondering if perhaps, given the fact that they've seen it happen elsewhere in the economy, they'll be more palatable to accepting it happening at their doorstep. But nonetheless, that remains to be seen. Louis, to bring you back in here, if the savings from cutting the wage bill, or if the minister is not able to get the desired level of savings from cutting the wage bill, obviously he has to look at other areas in which we can get revenue to afford our expenditure, but also to pay down our debt. Not much mention of taxes this time around, and I do believe it's because, those will be detailed in the main budget in February. But what should we be bracing for by way of potential tax hikes as a result of the budget needing much needed revenue to plug the gap?
Yeah, obviously the unfortunate truth is that it could come from anywhere. If you look back at the 2020 budget, if you look, for example, at something like individual income taxes, it was then noted that the adjustments were made to provide for fiscal drag, which were not in previous years. So, individuals did not become poorer in real terms, if we can put it like that. But whether those, those ideas will be incorporated again, seems unlikely at this stage. So the one thing that could come from individual tax, one would also have to see, whether the previous sentiments expressed regarding corporate income tax will be pursued. It was mentioned in the 2020 budget that there would be proposals regarding the limitation of, in tax terms, what one refers to as assessed tax losses, to expand the tax base and then to maybe decrease the corporate tax rate. I'm not sure if that's something that'll now that'll still be pursued. And then the other thing, of course, is that this week, in fact, most entities that are liable for carbon tax would have had to make their first carbon tax payments for the previous year. So, once some of that data comes out and one sees, how much is generated through the carbon tax and so forth, that would probably inform some of the decisions that are made and some of the announcements made in the budget in 2020. But ultimately, it could really be anything, unfortunately, and COVID has just exacerbated the situation.
Yeah, it certainly has. Louis Mpho, thanks so much for your time. We will leave it there. Thanks so much for your insights and your analysis. Of course, I'm sure you did hear that reference to the COVID-19 loan guarantee scheme that Treasury is in partnership with the Reserve Bank and also the Banking Association was mentioned yet again, and reviews to ensure that the uptake in lending is strengthened will be going on once again, and I look forward to seeing some of the measures that will be put in place to make it easier for companies, it would look like, to access that much needed funding, to stay operational, to stay in a position whereby they can hire and not fire. But that is where we leave it.